Coding the Competitive Advantage and the Birth of Microsoft, 1975-1980. The strategic code of Bill Gates was not primarily about innovation. It was about ubiquity and leverage. Unlike other titans who sought to monopolize oil, Rockefeller, or finance, Rothschilds, Gates set out to achieve a more pervasive, invisible form of dominance: control over the operating system, OS, the digital foundation of every modern machine. This necessity introduced the first foundational strategic pillar, the Code of Licensing Ubiquity. The story begins in 1975, when Gates and Paul Allen founded Microsoft. Their initial success came from developing a version of the basic programming language for the MIT's Altair 8800. This early work immediately taught Gates a critical lesson. In the world of software, the greatest value is derived from selling the same product millions of times with minimal marginal cost, rather than from selling custom hardware. The decisive strategic pivot, however, occurred in 1980 with the emergence of IBM. The dominant force in computing, IBM was developing its personal computer, PC, and needed an operating system. This moment was the greatest strategic arbitrage in technological history, often cited as Gates's first mastery of the Code of Leverage. IBM made two critical mistakes that Gates exploited. 1. They underestimated software. IBM prioritized the hardware, the physical machine, and viewed the operating system as a low-value commodity, not the long-term lever of control. 2. They didn't write the OS. They chose to license the OS from an outside vendor, allowing Gates to step into the void. Gates did not have the OS IBM needed. Instead of developing it from scratch, he brilliantly executed a deal to acquire QDOS, Quick and Dirty Operating System, from Seattle Computer Products, rebranding it as MS-DOS, Microsoft Disk Operating System. This acquisition, bought for a reported $50,000, was the physical foundation of the empire. However, the true strategic genius of Gates's deal with IBM was not the licensing itself, but the terms of the license. Gates insisted on retaining the right to license MS-DOS to any other hardware manufacturer. IBM, arrogant in its belief that its brand name and hardware would be the only standard, agreed. This seemingly small clause was the strategic Trojan horse that dismantled IBM's future power. IBM was locked into selling MS-DOS with its hardware. Microsoft was free to sell MS-DOS to all of IBM's future competitors. When the PC architecture was rapidly cloned by dozens of other manufacturers, IBM compatibles, every single one of them was forced to go to Microsoft to license the required operating system, MS-DOS. Gates had created a strategic system where every successful competitor to IBM was simultaneously contributing to the financial dominance of Microsoft. This Code of Licensing Ubiquity ensured that Microsoft would control the standard for all PCs, regardless of who built the hardware. This monopoly over the OS became the unshakable foundation for the development and later monopolization of the graphical user interface, Windows. By 1985, Gates had successfully transformed Microsoft from a coding startup into the indispensable gatekeeper of the global PC infrastructure.
The battle for the desktop and the establishment of Windows dominance, 1981-1990. The successful monopolization of the underlying operating system, MS-DOS, was merely the foundation. Bill Gates's next strategic imperative was to control the user interface, the graphical layer that consumers actually interacted with. This led to the most aggressive and consequential technology battle of the 1980s, the war to establish the Graphical User Interface (GUI) standard. This necessity gave rise to the second strategic pillar, the Code of the Standardized User Experience, the desktop moat. The concept of the GUI, featuring icons, windows, and a mouse, was initially pioneered by Xerox PARC and later popularized and refined by Apple with the launch of the Macintosh in 1984. Steve Jobs correctly identified the GUI as the key to mass market appeal. However, Gates employed a far superior strategic approach to adoption. The strategic exploitation of Apple's innovation. Gates entered into a relationship with Apple ostensibly to develop software, specifically Excel and Word, for the new Macintosh platform. This access gave Microsoft crucial early insight into the functional and design elements of the graphical interface. This was a classic Gates move, learning from the innovator while simultaneously building the superior distribution channel. While Apple pursued a closed, integrated, and high-cost hardware-software model, controlling both the Mac hardware and the Mac OS, Gates leveraged the open architecture established by the IBM PC. 1. The Windows launch, 1985. Microsoft launched its first version of Windows. It was initially buggy and slow, but strategically, it was brilliant. It offered a graphical environment layered on top of the already ubiquitous MS-DOS operating system. The price advantage. Because Windows could run on the thousands of cheaper IBM-compatible machines, it immediately had a massive price and distribution advantage over the expensive closed Macintosh hardware. Apple's attempt to control quality through exclusivity became their fatal strategic weakness. The code of the application's moat Gates understood that the operating system itself was merely a platform. The true trap was the application's moat. An operating system is useless without professional-grade applications, like word processors and spreadsheets. Gates made a crucial internal decision. Microsoft must dominate the application layer. Microsoft poured resources into creating superior productivity software, specifically Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Word. These applications quickly became the standard for business worldwide due to their functionality and compatibility. This created the unshakable network effect that cemented the Windows monopoly. Users demanded Windows because it ran the superior Microsoft Office suite, Word, Excel. Developers only wrote applications for Windows because that is where all the users were. Hardware manufacturers were forced to license Windows because users demanded the platform that ran the standard applications. By the early 1990s, with the release of Windows 3.0, the war was over. Apple's lawsuit against Microsoft for copyright infringement failed, and Windows secured its place on over 90% of the world's desktop PCs. Gates had successfully coded the ultimate trap. The desktop monopoly was complete, making Microsoft the indispensable gatekeeper of the digital age.
The platform shift to the web and the cost of strategic focus, 1995-2001. By the mid-1990s, Bill Gates had established control over the personal computing environment through the code of the standardized user experience. The Windows Office product line was a dominant revenue source, and the desktop structure seemed unassailable. However, a massive technological disruption emerged that challenged the centrality of the desktop: the Internet. Gates eventually recognized the urgency of this shift. His influential 1995 memo, the Internet Tidal Wave, clarified that control of the local operating system would become secondary if user interaction shifted primarily to web browsers and online applications. The core operating system risked becoming marginalized. This realization led to the establishment of the third strategic pillar, the Code of Feature Integration. The primary competitor was Netscape Navigator, which was defining web access. If Netscape achieved widespread independent adoption, it could potentially evolve into an application platform that circumvented the necessity of the Windows operating system. Gates initiated an immediate large-scale internal initiative to ensure Windows remained the essential access point to the web. The browser competition, deep system inclusion. The strategic objective was to integrate web access capabilities deeply within the Windows environment. To inclusion, Microsoft rapidly developed and began providing Internet Explorer, i.e., they integrated it directly into every new version of the Windows platform. Relationships. Microsoft utilized its vast network and commercial agreements with computer assembly partners. To maximize market reach, these partners were highly encouraged to ship machines with IE prominently featured and configured as the default user choice. Default setup. By making IE the system's primary web access tool, Microsoft utilized user convenience and guaranteed its product was the main channel for millions accessing the online world. This rapid integration strategy successfully shifted market dynamics. Netscape's growth rate slowed significantly. Gates successfully ensured that the Windows platform remained the mandatory gateway to the growing online structure. The cost of strategic focus. This aggressive market approach, however, had high internal costs. The extended period of heightened market scrutiny and the internal focus on managing competitive actions consumed extensive executive leadership time and corporate resources. This sustained strategic focus on securing the desktop's dominance over the web access point caused a critical internal distraction. The corporate energy required to manage this competition meant that Microsoft's leadership failed to allocate sufficient resources or strategic attention to the next truly disruptive technological movement: mobile and portable computing. By the time the competition with the browser company concluded, new industry leaders, like Apple and Google, had quietly defined the standards for the smartphone and search engine markets. This strategic oversight meant that Gates's company missed the opportunity to control the architecture of the post-PC era.
Strategic blind spots in search and mobile computing, 2000-2010. Following the intense strategic challenges of the late 1990s, Bill Gates and Microsoft entered the new millennium with their desktop platform secured, but facing entirely new waves of technological disruption. The strategic focus on defending the desktop environment led to the most critical failure of the Gates era: missing the code of the next platform. The fourth strategic failure was twofold: the failure to anticipate the dominance of Internet search and the profound underestimation of mobile computing. Failure 1. The code of search dominance. While Microsoft was heavily invested in ensuring Windows was the gateway to the Internet, they failed to recognize that the new center of digital gravity was shifting to how information was found. The rise of Google was not initially perceived as a critical threat. Gates and Microsoft viewed search algorithms as a utility, not as the next fundamental operating system of the digital age. Microsoft developed its own search capabilities, later rebranded as Bing. But the core strategy was flawed. They attempted to buy or build a competitive service after Google had already established the network effect of superior results and user trust. This failure to recognize search as a strategic control point, a platform that dictates commerce, advertising, and information flow, cost Microsoft billions in market value and ceded control of the Internet's primary navigation tool to a competitor. Failure 2. The mobile computing oversight. The most devastating strategic error was the complete underestimation of mobile computing. Microsoft had a significant head start in this area with Windows CE and later Windows Mobile. However, the product design and strategic execution were deeply flawed, rooted in the desktop code. 1. Complexity. Windows Mobile was designed as a shrunk-down version of the desktop OS, prioritizing functionality and complexity over simplicity and touch-based user experience. It required a stylus and was aimed at business users, adhering to the older code of productivity. Hardware control. Unlike Apple, which retained strict control over both the hardware and the software, the integrated code, Microsoft relied on hardware partners who lacked a unified vision, resulting in a fragmented, inconsistent, and often poor user experience. When Apple launched the iPhone in 2007 and Google launched Android in 2008, they implemented a radically different code: simplicity and touch-first interaction. They created platforms that prioritized user delight and ease of use over deep enterprise functionality. Gates himself later acknowledged that the failure to establish an early, dominant position in the mobile market was one of the greatest mistakes in corporate history, costing Microsoft potentially hundreds of billions of dollars in missed revenue and market capitalization. The company's long-standing strategy, control the operating system and leverage it, was neutralized because the world moved to a new computing platform that Microsoft simply did not control. The strategic irony was profound. The company that had successfully neutralized the threat of the web browser by moving aggressively was slow, complex, and conservative when faced with the mobile revolution, proving that even a market-dominant entity can become strategically inert if its leadership focuses too heavily on defending the past rather than investing aggressively in an uncertain future.
Applying system strategy to global health and development, 2000 present. By the early 2000s, Microsoft's market dominance was challenged by the rise of new, unmanaged platforms. mobile, and search. Simultaneously, Bill Gates executed the single most dramatic strategic transition of his career. He initiated the shift from the code of financial power to the code of global influence. This massive undertaking, moving from the tech CEO to the world's most powerful philanthropist, was driven not by sentimentality, but by the application of the same system optimization strategy he used to build Microsoft. The fifth strategic pillar is the Code of Leveraged Philanthropy. In 2000, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, BMGF, was formally established. Unlike traditional charity, which often treats symptoms, Gates applied the Microsoft method to global problems. 1. Identify bottlenecks. Just as Gates identified the operating system as the single bottleneck controlling the PC industry, the foundation identified bottlenecks in global health, such as the logistics of vaccine delivery and the lack of funding for specific diseases, e.g., malaria and polio. 2. Scale the solution. The strategy was not to fund local clinics but to fund the system, investing in scientific research, creating large-scale distribution partnerships, and leveraging private capital to solve public problems. The sheer scale of the foundation's capital, the largest private foundation in the world, allowed it to operate with a scale and speed that often surpassed governments and international organizations like the World Health Organization, WHO. 3 measurable outcomes. The foundation adopted the data-driven approach of a tech company, focusing only on programs with quantifiable results, e.g., reduction in child mortality rates. If a program failed to meet key performance indicators, KPIs, the funding was strategically redirected. This model of leveraged philanthropy allowed Gates to achieve an unprecedented level of global influence. By investing billions in vaccines, infectious disease research, and agricultural science, he effectively became a sovereign power in the field of global development. This strategic pivot provided 2 crucial benefits for Gates. Reputation management. It successfully distanced his public image from the aggressive, often criticized tactics of the tech giant era, transforming him into a respected global figure. Systemic control. By funding key research and policy initiatives, he shifted from controlling the world's desktops to influencing the world's most vital systems, health, energy, and education, a form of control that is far more durable and politically unassailable than a commercial monopoly. By 2008, Gates stepped down from his day-to-day role at Microsoft, dedicating himself full-time to the foundation. He had successfully executed the ultimate strategic move, transforming immense financial wealth into immense human capital influence, securing his legacy as a critical global actor for generations to come, regardless of Microsoft's future market performance.
The Code of Climate Innovation and the Role of the Global Advisor, 2010-present. Following the successful application of the Code of Leveraged Philanthropy to global health, Bill Gates expanded his strategic focus to the largest systemic challenge facing the planet: climate change and energy innovation. Having established his expertise in global system management, his influence extended beyond private giving to becoming a central global strategic advisor. The 6th strategic pillar is the Code of the Necessary Breakthroughs. Gates recognized that incremental improvements to existing technologies would not solve the climate crisis. Just as he once sought a software breakthrough, Windows, to capture the desktop market, he now sought a fundamental energy breakthrough to stabilize the climate. His strategy involves 2 core components. 1. Direct innovation funding, Breakthrough Energy. Gates founded Breakthrough Energy, a massive initiative designed to fund the next generation of zero-carbon technologies that are currently too risky or too expensive for traditional venture capital. This includes investing in entirely new fields like advanced nuclear energy via his company TerraPower, long-duration energy storage, and sustainable aviation fuel. This strategy mirrors his early Microsoft investment approach. Take massive, calculated risks in foundational technology with the expectation of massive systemic change if successful. 2. Global advisory role. Leveraging the reputation and access gained through his foundation, Gates positioned himself as a trusted, nonpartisan advisor to the world's most powerful governments and organizations, G7, UN, major national health ministries. His influence is derived from his ability to synthesize complex scientific and economic data, presenting clear, actionable steps for global leaders. The Code of Global Data and Policy Gates's advisory influence is not built on political clout, but on the controlled application of data. The Foundation invests heavily in research and data collection, which allows Gates to speak with statistical authority on topics ranging from pandemic preparedness, a key focus before and during the COVID-19 pandemic, to agricultural yields in developing nations. This strategic use of objective, high-quality data ensures that when Gates advocates for a policy change or a spending priority, it is backed by what appears to be the most rigorous analysis available, making his recommendations incredibly difficult for governments to dismiss. In this phase, Gates's strategic role shifted from the product architect to the system architect. He moved beyond the market and beyond traditional philanthropy to address challenges that require global, coordinated, long-term policy shifts. He continues to prove that access to high-quality data and the strategic application of capital towards systemic bottlenecks are the ultimate forms of long-term global influence, securing his legacy as a central figure in defining the future of human development and technological sustainability.
The enduring Code of Leverage and the final verdict on influence, present day. The life and career of Bill Gates represent the ultimate masterclass in strategic pivot and the application of a single, powerful philosophy across entirely different domains. Whether building a software behemoth or combating global health crises, his core methodology, the Code of System Optimization, remained consistent. This final pillar synthesizes the entire saga, providing the definitive insight into the nature of his influence. The Unified Code, Software and Philanthropy. The strategic success of Microsoft and the Foundation are rooted in the same principles. 1. Monopolizing the foundation, the leverage point. In software, the foundation was the operating system, Windows. In philanthropy, the foundation is the data and system architecture for global health and development. Both strategies focused on controlling the essential, indispensable layer, upon which all subsequent actions depend. The Code of the Network Effect. Microsoft thrived because every user and developer was forced to use Windows, creating a self-reinforcing loop. Similarly, the Foundation's influence thrives because its capital and data are so immense that governments, NGOs, and research institutions must align with its priorities to achieve their goals, creating a vast, non-commercial network effect. The cost of focus, the strategic blind spot. The intense singular focus required to achieve dominance often leads to strategic blindness. Microsoft's victory in the desktop war, 1990s, caused the failure in the mobile war, 2000s. This demonstrated that the Code of Optimization, while effective for achieving deep control in one area, struggles to adapt to rapid, external technological shifts. The enduring legacy. The legacy of Bill Gates is defined by two fundamental strategic contributions. 1. The Code of Ubiquity. He proved that control over digital standards, Windows, grants a form of power that transcends traditional financial or industrial control, making him the architect of the digital age's most enduring platform. The Code of Systemic Influence. By transitioning to high-leverage philanthropy, he demonstrated that immense private wealth, when applied strategically, can achieve sovereign-level global influence, addressing systemic failures that governments often cannot. This redefined the role of the modern billionaire, shifting the measure of success from wealth accumulation to systemic impact. Gates's ultimate strategic decision was to step away from the financial code of Microsoft and into the global code of the Foundation. He moved from being the most powerful man in a single industry to one of the most powerful advisors influencing the world's most critical systems: health, energy, and policy. The lesson of the Gates Code is that true 21st century power lies not in owning physical assets, but in controlling the architecture and the rules of the system itself, whether those systems are coded in software or rooted in global policy.